All right, man, we are in the book of Judges, chapter 6, and it's actually 6, 7, and 8, but don't panic. I mean, it may be a little longer than should, but I want to try and tell this story in a way that makes sense to us. And so if you're not sure about where we are in the whole scheme of God's book, and if I were to give you the scheme of God's book in an overfly that helps you make sense, the first part of the Bible that you hold in your hand or have in your machine that you're carrying around, your phone or whatever, is the story of creation. As soon as creation is done, a crisis happened, right? Sin entered the world, and it destroyed what God had created. And so we lost three things in that moment. We lost light, that is truth. We began to be dark. We lost life. In the day you eat, you shall die. And then we lost the ability to love because we turned inward and began to be absorbed with ourselves. And so those three things are lost. And so mankind is in this disruptive state, so much so that not many years go by and God goes, man, everywhere I look is evil, always, only, continuously. That's that crisis, and that's the effect of it. But God says, I'm going to call me out somebody new. And God took a man named Abraham, and he called him out. And he said, I'm going to make of you a great nation. So there's a creation, and there's a crisis, and there's a call. And then there's a conversation that he has with this people that he chose. And that conversation is all the books of the prophets and all the poems. And so he used poets, prophets, and he used normal people, and he began to speak into them that they might speak to this group. Well, they realized, it didn't take long, they realized that they couldn't fix themselves. That's where we're in. We're right now in the story of them realizing, we need help. I can't fix myself. And so then the New Testament shows up and Christ is there. So if you've been keeping up, the Bible flows like this. There's a call. There's a creation, there's a crisis, there's a call. Then God begins to communicate with his people. That's where we are right now. And the Gospels is Christ, the Redeemer, the ones who's going to make all things new. And then he creates a community. That's you and me as believers. And so all from Acts really to the book of the Revelation is all about community and how we ought to function one to another. And then the last piece of it is the consummation. Now in that consummation is some judgment and some destruction, and then there's a new heaven and a new earth, right? And so he's made all things new. That's the Bible from beginning to end. If you don't learn anything else here today, you see how that fits together. So you know where you are, depending on where you are. So right now we're in the book of Judges. He's communicating with his people, who he has called out and given them the law through Moses. Do these things, I'm going to bless you. Don't do these things, I'm going to curse you. And the law was not meant to make man perfect. The law was so that man could realize, I'll never be perfect. That's the whole point, right? And so we realize, and I don't know if you figured it out yet, but we're all that far from cracking up. We're dirty, rotten, stinking little sinners, right? And at any moment, I can be on that plane where I feel like I'm on solid ground and just jump into a shiny mud pit, right? I mean, am I the only one that can do that? I can chase after sin. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Man, it's so easy to grab up my sword and go, hey, I got this one, God. I'm afraid you ain't going to do it the way I want it done, right? And every time I do, I dig a deeper hole, right? And so this is God's people. This is the story of God's people. We're different because we have been redeemed and we have the Spirit of Christ in us. They were looking forward to a Messiah, and they were looking forward to that. And God's Spirit did move among them. We're going to see. He's going to invade a man named Gideon today, and we're going to see what happens when he does so. And we're going to see what kind of people he uses. And so this story, I want you to hear. I don't want us to get bogged down in the text. The text is the text, and it is a narrative. It's different than the New Testament where it's teaching and you break it down. We're telling stories here. And so I'm going to tell you the story of Gideon, and you're going to see it in chapter 6 and chapter 7. And so let me tell you where we are. God's people have made it to the promised land. They crossed that Jordan. It parted just like it did in Moses' day with the Red Sea. That Jordan River parted, and all of God's people walked into the land that God had promised them 40 years ago and promised Abraham like a lot of years, 400 years before that, right? But now they're in it. They're in there, and they're in the promised land. And guess what's in there with them? All these giants, all these idolaters, all these pagans. And God said, I'm going to give you this land, and I'm going to trust that you'll clean it out. And I'm going to be with you. I'm going to go before you. I'm going to fight your fights. I just need you to trust that when you step, I'm going to fix it. Right? That's really that's the whole Old Testament. And so what we found was that they went in, and Joshua lived in there for a long time, helped them clear things out. And he goes, hey, man, remember Joshua? He's at the end of it. Listen, my days are done. I'm 110 years old. I'm ready to go. I'm going to tell you this. You still got work to do. And so he's telling the whole nation, gather all the leaders of all those 12 tribes. You got to keep cleaning house here. And I don't know about you. I don't know if you're going to decide to settle in and let the world mingle with you. Or are you going to separate out like I've called you to? But as for me and my house, we're serving the Lord. And I'm going to use that rock. As I've spoken, that rock is a witness to us. And I'm telling you, you got to decide what you're going to do. Because me and my family, we already made that decision. I'm following him. I'm going to kill everything that's not holy in my life. I'm going to kill it right now. Now, metaphorically speaking, that's our heart, right? When you came to Christ, he redeemed you, right? And he washed you, and he cleansed you, and he put his spirit within you, but yet we still have the residual effects of this old man. And so I still do the wrong things. My job, if I reduce it down to the metaphor that I understand, I'm going to grab my flesh by the throat, I'm going to punch it in the face until it quits moving so that God in me can fill every crevice and I can be like Jesus, because that's what he's called me to be, right? This is the whole, I'm giving you simple Bible truth that sometimes we forget. Now, in this story that we find ourselves in, it's the story of this sin cycle, right? God blesses us and we feel happy, and then we kind of forget him, and we start dabbling in shiny stuff, right? In case you haven't figured out what shiny stuff is, that's everything but Jesus, right? The whole world. Don't love the world or its system, anything in it, because it's destructive, right? Don't love the world, right? Come out from among the world and be ye separate, right? Be transformed. Don't be conformed to the world, be transformed. And so all of that shiny stuff that we tend to gravitate toward, greed and lust and envy and jealousy and lying to get our way, all of those things, it has to go. This is what happens in their life. Only it's a vivid picture here. They don't root it out. They start dwelling with the evil. They start bringing the world into their own life, and they find themselves in bondage. Now here, it's enemy that keeps creeping in. They were supposed to clear it out, and they didn't. So now they're in bondage. Now they got people that, and what happened when they mingled with them is they took on their worship. So they're worshiping sex, they're worshiping idols. God's people, whom he brought from bondage already, freedom, put them through the wilderness so they would know who he is and know his power and know how he fed them and protected them and their clothes didn't wear out, that he provided everything they had. And then said, I'm going to give you a land, and you're going to live in houses you didn't build, and you're going to reap from the vineyards that you didn't reap, and I'm going to put you in there. You got one job. Get rid of the riffraff that's in there. And they didn't do it. So now they're in bondage to it. It's like they're there, and all of a sudden the weeds are growing up, and they don't care, and all of a sudden now they're entangled in it. Now they're entangled in this mess, right? That's where they are. The story's going to go quickly. I just want you to get to this part. So this is where they find themselves. God lets their own desires be their own trap. Ever had that happen in your own life? You think you're going to do what you want to do, and you do that stuff, and you go, I'm going to take that sin, I'm going to do it, and you look around and you go, man, all of a sudden I feel heavy. I got all these chains. Where did these chains come from? What's this ball I'm dragging around? Man, it's your sin. That's what you did, you moron, right? That's us. As soon as I confess that, those chains fall off. That's it. I have to repent. But if I keep holding on to it, now I'm in a pity party, and that's where they are. Oh, God, where are you? Well, I'm right here where I've been. You went off. How's that working out for you, right? That's kind of what's going on. And so they cry out to him, and God goes, I love you. See, he's that prodigal father, right? He's like, we want to go and talk about all that mess. He goes, well, look, I appreciate that. Let's fix your situation, though, right? That prodigal comes home. Oh, man, I'm so sorry. Can I just be a servant? Bro, you're my son. You ain't going to be no servant. We're going to celebrate. You were dead. You're alive. It's a party, man. This is a party, and we can't see it. But Gideon is the beginning of that party, because God is going to do what they didn't do. And they came home, and they cried out to him, and he's going to fix it. Because that's who he is. Because he loves us, right? And then they're all fat and happy and they're at peace, and then they're going to get stupid again, right? And such is the story of our life. So, yeah, with all that as a backdrop, you ready? Yeah, I got 10 minutes now. I'm just kidding. It could be a while. No, I'm just kidding. So let's just look at it. All right. So here's where it says, chapter 6. Then the sons of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord handed them over to Midian for 7 years. Now, Midian, just so you know, so these are Jacob's children, right? Israel, Jacob's children, right? Jacob's dad was Isaac. His mom was Sarah. Abraham had another wife named Keturah, whom he had a son named Midian. So Midian and the Midianites are stepchildren to Isaac, which is Jacob, which are these 12 tribes. Does that make? Are you getting that picture? But they're evil. They're evil. So they're evil stepchildren in a sense. And so they've come in and they're taunting them now. Listen to what it says they're doing. The power of Midian prevailed against them. Hey, God says, hey, you want to live? You want to live in the world? Great, enjoy. And He lets Midian do what Midian does. He does his evil stuff. And so here's what they do. Listen to what it says. The power of Midian prevailed against Israel. Because of Midian, the sons of Israel made for themselves dens which were in the mountains, in the caves, and the strongholds. For whenever Israel had sown, the Midianites would come up with the Amalekites and the people of the east and march against them. So they would camp against them and destroy the produce of the earth as far as Gaza, and leave no sustenance in Israel, nor sheep or ox or donkey. For they would come up with their livestock in their tents. They would come in like locusts in number, and both they and their camels were innumerable, and they came into the land to ruin it. So Israel was brought very low because of Midian, and the sons of Israel cried out to the Lord. So here's what happened. Hey, they're living in their land. And all of a sudden, these Alibaba and whatever he's got coming at him, right? And their camels. You'll read, they come with their camels and horses. They're like locusts. They just come in. They hate Israel, and so what they do is they just destroy everything. They've destroyed their houses. They've killed every oxen. Every time they come in, they destroy the crops. That's all they do. They're just marauders, or however you say that word, right? And they just want to destroy things. And so now, because of that, the children of Israel aren't living in the houses that God allowed them to live in that they didn't build. Now they're in the caves. Now they're hiding out. You need to know that. This is where they are. Because the story we're getting ready to tell you won't make sense until you see that. All right? So they've lost everything. And they're cowered down. And every time they hear the hoofbeats of the camels and the horses of the Midianites, they know, here comes one more bludgeoning. Maybe they saved a little lamb and they started to grow them again, right? Raise them again. And they got little crops and they're trying to protect it, try to hide it so nobody can see it. And in come the Midianites and they just rape the land again and they kill everything in here. They're crying out to God. Right? Now, why does this situation happen? Was God not watching them? No, God was watching them. They didn't do what God told them to do. And they reaped the results. Now, I don't know if that sounds like you or me, but there are times, most of my troubles are my fault, right? I mean, if we're just honest, most of my troubles are my fault. Every regret that you have is because you violated the scriptures of the living God. Just think about it. Every regret because of that. Right? Now, that's where they are. So mingling is going to change you. And they've mingled together and they're changed. You know what they're doing? They're worshiping Baal. Right? These aren't like God's people all sold out to God. And poor little God's people, Midian, is coming in to destroy them. No. While you were living in that land, you quit worshiping God. You go, hey, let's just hedge our bets. Let's start worshiping Baal. And Baal loves sex. So let's create these Asherah poles. Let's worship that. Let's just let sexual immorality just permeate the land. Let's just be just like the world. We want to fit in. And so they have. And so what happens is they're reaping what they sowed, but they don't even know it. Right? But they do know this. They do know that if God don't help ain't come. Right? They've gotten to that place. God takes us all to that place. They've gotten to that place where they go, well, man, we can't beat Midian. They're bigger and mightier than us. They come in, it's just brutal. We got nothing. How many times you got in that place where you go, oh yeah, there's a God in heaven. Maybe I should cry out to him, right? And so this is where they are. Now, the longer you linger without calling out to him, the greater the effort, right, that you have to put in. Because what happens is you've just allowed yourself to be conformed to the world. Right? God puts us in a good place and we disobey. This is that whole cycle. Now, so that's where we are. Now, let's look at what happens in verse 7. Now, it came about when the sons of Israel cried out to the Lord on account of Midian, that the Lord sent a prophet to the sons of Israel, and he said to them, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. It was I who brought you up from Egypt, brought you out of the house of slavery. I rescued you from the lands of the Egyptians and from the hands of all your oppressors, and I drove out from you and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God, and you shall not fear the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live, but you have not obeyed me. Listen, God's going to fix you, but he's going to lecture you just like a dad, right? I mean, sometimes he's going to say, I told you so, right? I mean, he's just going to do that. And that's what he's doing here. Hey, I told you so. I told you I wanted you to be holy. I told you you shouldn't chase after the world. I told you you shouldn't marry that woman. I told you you shouldn't be friends with those people, right? I told you those things. You knew what the word said, yet you did it anyway. I want you to know that, right? So this is what I'm trying to make it make sense to us, right? But that's what's going on. But listen to what God does. God's going to send a messenger to go. And how many times did that happen in your life? And he brought somebody to you. Could have been a stranger. I've had strangers come to me and tell me stuff about me. I'm like, how do you even know that? But it was like a timely word. God was slapping me around, right? Thank God for prophets like that, right? And this is what he did here. And what did the prophet say? Man, here's what I did. I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this. But no, you weren't happy with that. So you decided instead of fearing the gods of the Amorites, you're going to embrace the gods of the Amorites. You didn't obey me. And so I let you have what you thought you wanted. How's it working out for you? You ever find yourself in that place? Bottom of a heap? Sitting there scraping yourself like Job, And the whole deal is, man, look upward, man. Where does our help come from, right? I got myself here. I ain't blaming God for it. My fault. The sooner we can get those words out of our mouth, the day we quit blaming everybody else for our troubles, and we quit blaming God for my troubles, or it was my daddy, listen, I'm so tired of this world deciding that it's everybody else's fault. This is what's wrong with the generation that we raised. They can't appreciate the fact they can't own what they do. They got to talk about my feelings and how I'm responsible for your feelings, and that's not my place. I'm sorry, it's not. It's you. You got to own you. I don't want to be preaching. I'm not ranting. I'm just letting you know. We have to come to the place where I have to go, I am my trouble. Until you get to that place, because we're evil people. If I can keep blaming it on the hamster here, my life feels better. It's not, but it feels better. But I don't see change. Change comes when I go, it ain't the woman's fault. It's not my kid's fault. It's not my mama's fault. It's not my daddy's fault. It's not my church's fault. It's my fault. I'm it. This is where they've come to. Then the angel of the Lord came, and this is where it gets fun. Then the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak, which was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash, the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress in order to save it from the Midianites. Now, in case you didn't catch all of that, let me tell you what's going on. So Joash is an Abiezrite, and Abiezrite is the half-tribe of Manasseh. They're the smallest of the tribes. There was a fight in their family, so they just divided the land up, so they divided it between Manasseh and Ephraim, and so Manasseh is like the least of the least. And so Gideon is a part of them. Now, I want you to hear, so just get the picture, all right? Angel of the Lord just swept in, right? That is the impersonification of Jesus in the Old Testament, okay? Not just an angel, this is God himself showing up in the form of the angel of the Lord. And so, he sits down by an oak tree, and he's looking at a well. He's looking at a wine press, right? Now, in the wine press, it was probably somewhere around 6 feet tall or whatever. It was where it's not that hard to get, right? If you watch Lucy back in the day when she was stomping grapes, so they just throw the grapes in that well, and they get in there, and they're stomping, right? Except there's nothing to stomp, because why? They got no vineyards. Because why? Because Midianites have destroyed everything. But they do have a little bit of wheat. Now, normally, you thresh wheat out in the open, up in the high plain where nothing grows, and it's flat and it's hard. And so there, you can catch the wind because it's not in the valley, and you can toss that wheat up and watch it sift down. And you've got animals that come in and don't muzzle the ox while he's threshing. You hear that phrase in the scriptures talking about preachers. This is what that is there. So those oxen would just walk around on it. And you'd have families that would get together, and they've got wheat, and they need to separate it out. Those animals do it, and they crush the kernel starts sliding out, all of those things, and then they take it and they toss it up, and all the chaff goes away, and what falls is the wheat and the good stuff, and they can do things with it, right? Only Gideon isn't on the threshing floor, because why? Because the Midianites will see him. So he's hiding out in a wine press. Because they're not looking for anybody in the wine press, because they already knew, hey, I've destroyed that whole thing. So Gideon, this timid little man, now he could have been a soldier in the past, because most of Israel was a soldier, right? I mean, they went to war. They all raised up men, they went to war. Not like he didn't know how to battle, but he's scared to death of the Midianites. That's like the biggest giant in the land. And so he's hiding out in here, and you get this picture, it's not that big. He's got his wheat in there, and so he's trying to toss it up, and probably his fork is hitting the side of that thing as he does it, and it's not going up high enough for the wind to catch it, so it's just falling down on him, and the angel Lord just sitting there watching all this little dust fall up, and it falls right back down, right? You get the picture? This is the story. I'm not making it up. I'm just helping you see it. Now, in the middle of that, the Lord looks at him and goes, Gideon, you mighty warrior, you. I want to talk to you. Now, Gideon's got to be going, who is saying that? And what warrior? Does he see himself as a warrior? I mean, I think if he saw himself as a warrior, he wouldn't be hiding out in a wine press. Right? So, first thing we need to understand is God sees who you are even before you see who you are. Right? Listen, we forget who we are when we're in the battle. We forget who we are when our whole world is collapsed around us because we forgot the God that we serve. And we started doing our own crap, right? And then we realized that I can't get my way out. I keep digging. I keep trying to get out, and I'm in a bigger hole than I was. I think that's the story of my life. I don't know if it's yours or not. I'm just telling you it's mine. And so there comes a point I don't feel like a man of God at all, right? Sometimes I just feel like, man, why am I even here? And what am I doing? And along comes God. And he goes, hey, pardon? You mighty warrior pastor, you? And I'm like, no, God. No, that's a joke. That's what that is, right? And he's saying, no, it's who you are. I hope you're hearing this because this is for you and me both, right? If you're still breathing here, you have purpose, right? Good works that God prepared beforehand that you should walk in them, right? He appointed these times and places in which we should live. You don't mind me preaching just a little bit, do you? You were made for this day, and this day was made for you. If you're here today, it's because you got skill that you can't see that God put in you because you're one of His. And you forgot it because you got so busy keeping your eyes horizontal and you weren't looking vertical enough and you forgot who you were. You're in the middle of a mess and you look silly sitting there and God's going, hey, you mighty woman of God, you mighty valiant soldier, you. I want to talk to you. Come on. I want to hear that voice, don't you? I don't want to hear my voice. My voice tells me who I am, right? My voice tells me who the evil one wants me to be, right? There was that song. There was a song where God sings that and he goes, but God tells me a different story. Or I don't know whether we're going to find that song, right? But that's what's going on here. So this is the situation. Now, the angel sits down, they do all that, and he says, the Lord is with you. God, listen, I'm just telling you, God calls you like He sees you, right? He looked at Simon and goes, Petros, rock. That's what I see. He sees a little shepherd boy and he goes, yeah, that's my king, right? Are you hearing this? He sees Esther, pretty little girl, but goes, no, she's queen. I'm going to use her to save all of my people, right? This is what he does. He looks at Moses, who's just tired and hiding out. He wants to be left alone. He just wants to work for his father. Man, how bad do you have to be to want to work for your father-in-law, right? He's just out there working for his father-in-law, just messing with the father-in-law's sheep. He's like the lowest of the low. And God goes, hey, man, you're my deliverer. Right? Come on, God's calling you something. And you need to know what He's calling you. Because there's something in you that He's going to use. I'm not making it up. You can read it for yourself. So listen, you may not know what to think about yourself, and your family may not know what to do with you, but I know this: God has purpose and plans for your life. Okay, just take that to the bank. Listen to what He says in verse 14. Then the angel Lord came, sat under the oak, and the angel said, Gideon, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened? He said, man, you're a mighty valiant warrior. And Gideon's like, no, man, that ain't true. If God was with me, I wouldn't be in this trouble. Where is he? Where is he? Did the Lord not bring us from Egypt? But how's the Lord abandoned us and handed us over to Midian? And the Lord said to him, go in this strength of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you? Now, here's where he calls it. So he called him mighty man of valor, and he wanted to complain about God. And so I want you to go in your strength. Now, listen, when he says your strength, he's not talking about in Gideon. He's talking about the God that he's getting ready to put in Gideon, right? Go in that strength, right? And so then he says, I want you to go and bring an offering. I'm going to be here forever if we don't get going. But he said to him, oh, Lord, how am I? I'm the youngest in my father's house. Do you hear what he said? He's not listening. I'm not a valiant warrior. I'm the littlest of the little. I mean, I got brothers. Go get them. I'm just a runt, man. And I'm from the smallest tribe in all the land. You got Judah, the lion in the tribe of Judah. Go get one of them to fix this thing. And God's like, I'm looking at you, son. It's your job. I want you to go in the strength that's yours. I want you to kick their butt. Is that okay to say? That's what he's saying. Right? Now, yet the Lord said to him, I will certainly be with you, and you will defeat Midian as one man. So Gideon said to him, if I've now found favor in your sight, then perform for me a sign that is you speaking with me. Please don't depart from here until I come back to you and bring my offering and lay it before you. And he said, I'll remain here. So Gideon goes and he gets the calves, he gets everything, he brings it all back, he sets up this thing, and he puts all of that together, the wood and everything, and he sets the animal on top of it. And the angel of the Lord takes his staff in his hand. And he touches that rock, and that rock heats up like a flame, and it just consumes that thing. And Gideon's like, I think I'm in the presence of God Most High. Right? He asked for a sign. You want a sign? Sure. Hey, how about bring me an offering first? Show me that you're serious about your love for me. I'll consume that so much there'll be no denying that I'm God. Right? Man, this is good. I don't even know where I am. Then the angel of the Lord, verse 21, put the end of the staff with his hand and touched the meat and unleavened bread, and fire came up from the rock and consumed the meat. Then the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. When Gideon perceived that it was the angel of the Lord, he said, oh, Lord God, for I have seen the angel of the Lord. Now he's saying, I've seen God face to face. Everybody telling you can't see God face to face and live. Now he's freaked out. I just saw God. I'm going to die. And he's crying out. And God shows up again. Hey, peace, man. Don't be afraid. You're not going to die. Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and named it, the Lord is Peace. To this day it's still an Ophrah of the Abiezrites. Now, on the same night, the Lord said to him, take your father's bull and a second, all but 7-year-olds, and tear down the altar of Baal, which belongs to your father. Cut down the Asherah that is beside it. Build an altar to the Lord your God, and on top of this stronghold in an orderly way. I want you to take that second bull and offer a burnt offering with the wood of the Asherah, which you shall cut down. Then Gideon took 10 men from his servants, and he did as the Lord spoke, because he was too afraid of his father's household. Are you catching how fearful this guy is? He just saw God face to face. He just saw all of that stuff, and God said, tell you what I want you to do. Now, it's a tall tale. It's a tall story, right? Tall order. I want you to go. You know that big worship thing that your family loves to gather around? That Baal worship? Yeah. And that Asherah pole? I want you to cut that big pole up, and I want you to use that for. I want you to use the idols of your family and your nation to use, and I'm going to use it to consume the sacrifice that you bring. And so he's charged to go tear down the Baal offering, take the Asherah pole, get the wood together, and sacrifice these bulls on that thing. And he's like, I'm gonna take some guys with me. I'm a little nervous here, right? So here's this still weak-minded guy, right? He's afraid of his father's household and what the city. So when does he do it? What does it say? He did it at night, right? You're like, I'm going to sneak in here and do this thing. Maybe nobody will know, right? This is not a mighty, valiant warrior still yet. Are you with me? When the people of the city got up early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was torn down, and the Asherah which had been beside it was cut down. The second bull had been offered on the altar which had been built. So they said to one another, who did this thing? And when they searched, they inquired, they said, Gideon the son of Joash did this thing. Then the men of the city of Joash, bring you out your son that he may die, for he has torn down the altar of Baal, and indeed he has cut down the Asherah, which was beside it. But Joash his father stood against him and said, will you contend for Baal? Or, listen, my son may have torn that down. Baal can fight for himself. He's the God we've been worshiping. Hey, let Baal be Baal. I'm staying out of it, right? That's a wise man right there. Therefore, on that day, he named Gideon Jerubbaal. That is to say, let Baal contend against him, because he had torn his altar down. Now he's got a target on his back. Now everybody's calling him Jerubbaal. Who's Jerubbaal? Oh, the one who tore down Baal's tower, right? Now there ain't no secrets now. Then the Midianites, the Amalekites, and the people of the east gathered together, and they crossed over and camped in the valley of Jezreel. So the Spirit of the Lord covered Gideon like clothing. You hear that? Come on, man. When you make your sacrifice to God and you cleanse yourself up and you were scared, you did what he said, right? Hey, listen, we can be scared and still do what God calls us to do. It's okay to listen. This whole thing is about fear and doubt everywhere. Well, if you'll do this, I'll do that. Right? And I don't have time to get into all of it, but that's what's going on. And so just hear this. Listen, when we confess, when we clean out the evil that God has set around us because he's called us to, and we do what he says, even trembling, what happens? The Spirit of God, like a blanket, just clothes us. Right? So here's the truth. At that place, we're invincible until God says otherwise. Right? I'm invincible. Spirit of God on me. You can't harm me. And you'd be stupid to try. That's how I would say it. Thank you. This is what that means. So, then Gideon's like, man, you sure about this? So the Spirit of the Lord covered Gideon like clothing, and he blew a trumpet, and the Abiezrites were called together to follow him. And he sent messengers through Manasseh, and they also were called together. He's gathering men together. Gideon's like, all right, I guess we're doing this thing. And so he calls his neighbors, and he's like, hey, as many people as I can, right? He got 10 to tear down the altar, and I was like, man, I'm looking at 132,000 men out there. I ain't going by myself. And so he gets a crowd. He's such a man, he gathered 32,000 men. That's what he's going to gather. Now, but before we get there, and I don't have time to go into this, I'm going to just tell you real quickly the story. Gideon's still doubting. Gideon said, God, I got 30,000 men. They got 130,000. There's a big difference. That's like, the odds is terrible. Are you sure about this? And he says, if you're going to save Israel through me, then I'm going to put some wool on the ground. I just want to know, just to be sure. I trust you, sort of. But when I wake up in the morning, I'd love for that wool to just be all wet with the dew and everything around it dry. And then I'll know. So God does it. He wrings that sucker out. And he's seeing the water. Read it. He's wringing it out. There's no doubt what happened. We're not talking about a little bit of dew. Like, well, maybe an animal urinated on it. I don't know. No, he's wringing that sucker out. And then he says, I don't want to try you, Lord, but could we flip that around tonight? Could I lay that down? And it'd be dry and everything around so? This is the patience of the Lord here, right? At some point, I'm like, are you serious? But aren't we just like it?
Yes.
Man, I can find 1,000 reasons why not to do what the Lord I know has told me to do. Because it's scary. Right? And so this is what's going on here. So he did it. Don't let the anger of the Lord burn against me, Lord. But would you just check this out? Now we get to chapter 7. Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him got up early and camped beside the spring of Harod. You know what the spring of Harod is? You know what Harod means? It's the spring of trembling. Isn't that ironic, right? They're all gathered up by the spring of trembling, right? Because that's what they all are. 32,000 men, right? And so there they are. And the camp of Midian was on the north side of them by the hill of Moriah in the valley. And the Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many. If I'm Gideon, like, you created math, Lord, but look, I'm counting. I I could get 32,000 men. That's the strength of my leadership. I mean, maybe I'm terrible at it, but I got 32,000 in here. But Midian, he's got 132,000, and you're saying there's too many. Listen to this, because God will not have his glory given to another. You understand that? The people are too many. Otherwise, Israel would come boastful and say, my power has saved me. Now, therefore, come proclaim in the hearing of the people. Say, whoever is afraid and worried is to return and leave Mount Gilead. Now, I'm thinking Gideon's going, no, I just got them here. Let's just go before they change their mind. He goes, I want to know. I want to know if they're going to change their mind. You give them an out. It's crazy, right? Guess how many are left? It's in your Bible. 22,000. Yeah, Lord, this ain't going the way I'm wanting. I got 10,000 now, and they still got their 132,000. And then God says, there's still too many people. I mean, at what point do you go, Lord, seriously, can we have a conversation? Because, I mean, this don't make sense to me. And go tell you what, let's bring them down to this spring of trembling and see how they drink water. You've heard this story, but it's a good story, isn't it? So it shall be to you that he, the one that shall go with you, he shall go with you. But everyone to whom you say to you, the one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So the people go down to the water. Then the Lord said to Gideon, you shall put everyone who laps the water with his tongue as a dog laps in one group, and everyone who kneels down to drink in another. Now the number of those who lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people kneeled down to drink water. Then the Lord said to Gideon, I will save you with the 300. Now listen, I have a theory. You start reading about that, and like, well, everybody tries to get scientific about, well, the guys who did it like this, that they weren't paying attention, they were just goofballs. But the ones that were really warriors, they're there and they're doing like this because they want to know. But I'm thinking, but couldn't it be the other? The ones who just lapped like a dog just trusted God? They don't have to look around and see their surroundings. And the ones that did this were the ones that were fear and trembling. Maybe the 300 were the weakest of the weak, not the strongest of the weak. I don't know. It's a thought. Just, track with me. But at this point, he's got 300 men. 300. And now he's going, Lord, I mean, you're great and all, but have you ever fought in your life? Because you just took everything. I got 300. And he goes, yeah. And give them trumpets. And give them some pitchers, jugs. And I want you to give them a torch. Going to war. Wait, Lord. There's this thing called swords. I mean, I don't know if God, really? No, I got this. I'm going to go fight for you. So Gideon, okay, you 100, go over here. Can you imagine the conversation? They're 132,000. They don't have a weapon. He goes, you 100, go over there. We're going to right flank them. You 100, go over there. We're going to left flank them. And I'll take this group in the middle. He's freaked out. Now, let's get to this place. Verse 9. Now the same night it came about that the Lord said to him, arise, go down against the camp, for I had handed it over to you. Listen, he knows the frailty. You know what he's getting ready to do here? I want you to hear what your enemy's saying. I have told you who you are. You have yet to hear who I think you are. I want you to hear what your enemy really thinks about you. Listen to what happens. Arise, go down to the camp, for I've handed it over to you. But if you're afraid to go down, go with Purah your servant. I know you're a little scaredy cat. Take Purah with you. I know you wanted to. Go ahead, right? So that you will hear what they say. Afterward, you will have courage to go down against the camp. So we went down with Purah and the servants to the outpost of the army of the camp. Now the Midianites, Amalekites, and all the people of the east were lying in the valley as numerous as locusts, and their camels were without number, as numerous as the sand on the seashore. When Gideon came, behold, a man was relating a dream to his friend. So he overhears a man say, man, I had a dream last night. He just did what the Lord said. He just got his ear there and he's listening. Man said, hey, I had a dream last night. And he said, and this loaf of barley bread was tumbling into the camp of Midian, and it came to the tent and struck it so that it fell and turned upside down, and the whole tent collapsed. Like some guys telling me something about some loaf of barley coming down and destroying our whole camp. And the other one goes, this is nothing other than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. Do you hear what he's called? He's calling him what he doesn't even know. He calls him, listen to what he says, sword of Gideon, son of Joash, man of Israel, God has handed over to him Midian and all the camp. They see him as the great victor, and he can't even see himself but a scared loser. Hey, listen, do your job anyway. When God calls you, just do it, right? Now, you know what happens. They get down to the middle of this thing. They blow the trumpets. They got their torches, got the picture over it so they can't do this. 300 slip in against a camp of 132,000. And they're a little afraid of Gideon. Gideon blows the trumpet, breaks the pitcher, these torches come up. They didn't need a sword because God already provided them. They just started killing each other. These 300 men are standing around. They're screaming and yelling. Everything's going on, and the whole enemy is dropped dead in front of them. 132,000 men dead, laying just there in the valley. And they wait. A torch and a trumpet? That's how God works. And that's the longest sermon I've had in a while. But how powerful is this story, right? And so I just want us to hear that and know that. Now, and I don't know what you're going through right now. But I know this. God has a call on your life. You hear that? He appointed the exact times and place in which you shall live. And the boundaries in which you reside. And in Christ, He's created you in Christ Jesus to do good works that He prepared beforehand. And so, you're greater than you think you are. And I'm going to let us listen to a song that reminds us about, and it's my favorite, so sorry. I'm just going to let it play.